But the big question for me is, are we investing in the right data and the AI tools to stay competitive tomorrow?
Is it efficient for the customer? Absolutely not.
If money is limited investment, time, we cannot defy the laws of physics.
Real talk backed up with real action. This is GTM News Desk.
I'm Nick Bennett.
And I'm Mark Killens.
Let's see what's trending. Welcome to GTM News Desk. Excited about this. We've got a headline story. We've got a packed day for you. We've got a couple headline stories, and then we've got a fantastic guest for you today. But let's kick things off. So for those that are out there that have been following this whole OpenAI journey, ChatGPT, I am a ChatGPT user, although I don't use it as much anymore. I try to use Claude actually more. It's becoming more interesting to me. However, OpenAI just came out with some latest fundraising that could push their valuation to $150 billion. So just earlier this year, they were at about $86 billion, and they're in talks to raise $6.5 billion from investors like Microsoft, Thrive Capital. So ties in actually really well to our conversation with Ali, who will be our guest on a later piece of this show, because we talked a little bit about AI. But what's driving this? Simply put, AI is becoming essential to every industry, and investors see OpenAI as a leader. Now, again, there's still a human component of this, but here's where it gets interesting from a data and marketing perspective. So despite strong revenues they had $3.4 billion in revenue in just 2024. They're still expected to lose around $5 billion by year's end. So, which is even crazy to me. Like, I can't even comprehend that, but
a lot of zeros, Nick. It's a lot of zeros.
It's a lot of zeros. I don't know who, I get it. I'm sure at one point it will outweigh the other, but it's pretty clear to me. They're pouring resources into AI research, development. They're putting big bets on the futures. For marketers, this is kind of a key takeaway. Innovation doesn't come cheap, but the payoff can be massive. And as we get into our conversation later in the episode with Ali, we talk about, the rise of AI tools, how do you analyze data? How do you personalize customer experiences? How do you automate those processes? And if OpenAI's success teaches us anything, it's that businesses need to start looking at how AI can drive smarter marketing strategies. From predictive analytics to personalized customer journeys, I think we're still probably maybe a year or two away from this, but it's going to be the future and how it's integrated into a lot more personal aspect. But the big question for me is, are we investing in the right data and the AI tools to stay competitive tomorrow? So there are $150 billion valuations of wake-up calls that, obviously companies need to start investing in AI, leveraging it for operational efficiency, but also for smarter data-driven marketing that helps connect audiences. So it'll be interesting to see. I think in a couple of years, AI is going to be insane, probably partly dangerous. But yeah, it's interesting. Mark, I'm curious on your thoughts.
Well, at first, I'm disappointed you didn't introduce me and say hello at the beginning. So there's that. I'm going to hold you to that for a long time. Keep that in the back of your mind. But I think what you just said is a lot of jargon, quite frankly. I don't know. Yes, people are using ChatGPT, Claude. I use it like you do. And I would argue AI is already dangerous. There's already a lot of bad shit going on with it. A lot of bad shit. I just think it's so overhyped right now. And yes, they're losing a ton of money because of the compute power and the hardware that's needed, plus the cost of an AI engineer. If you want to make a lot of money, become an AI engineer. They're getting paid anywhere from $500,000 to upwards of $1 to $1.5 million a year in sellers, plus stock, plus all this other stuff. Right? They're gonna be super rich. So I say all that because we're still, from a marketing standpoint, just in a shitty spot when it comes to AI. It's a lot of just you're throwing crap on a wall and seeing if any of it's sticking, and really almost none of it's sticking. We're gonna talk about this in the next segment in a moment. The promises that companies are making about AI are so fundamentally flawed. It's now becoming a joke. And LinkedIn is picking up on it, Nick, and people are seeing right through all the bullshit. And they're saying to themselves, wait a minute, AI is nothing special. AI, it doesn't even matter about AI. All we want is the result, a better outcome to get this job done. If AI can do it, fine. If AI can't do it, I don't care. But at the end of the day, people don't give two craps about AI. Know why? Most people, I don't like to speak in absolutes, but most people, Nick, don't care what engine is in their car because they don't care. All they care about is if the car gets them from point A to point B on a reliable basis. And that's the exact same thing with AI.
That's true. And I think it's going to go to show. It's like, I mean, I don't care which AI I use as long as it gets me where I want, which goes back to like, can you prompt it the right way? Can you use it the right way? Like, I don't care what I'm using. It's just like, get me to where I want to go.
Exactly. So segment 2, good friend, Scott Brinker, worked a lot with him at HubSpot. He is amazing when it comes to his content and research. ChiefMartech.com. We'll have it in the show notes, everyone. He recently published an article about AI. I mean, he's talking a lot about AI. He talks a lot about like MarTech and the whole tech scene. But he's created this article about how is AI good for actual B2B consumers? Like, is it good? And is it helping the B2B marketer, the B2B salesperson serve their buyers and customers better? And he did a pretty big study about this, a lot of great data. And he built a couple of frameworks. He always does. He and I love mental models, as you know, Nick. And one of them is around, hey, it's a 2x2. Hey, what is good for the company versus good for the customer when it comes to AI? Again, like look at the show notes to see this. But if it's efficient for the customer, efficient for the company, then yes, it's delightful. You should do it. But what we're seeing is an example as the SDR automation that's happening right now, BDR automation. Is it efficient for the company? Yeah, probably. Is it efficient for the customer? Absolutely not. It is garbage. I got one just yesterday that I put in TAC Insider, community. It was from a pretty reputable, I think Series B or C company. I click on the link in the email and it's completely nothing to do with what they promised me in the email. Like the thing that they said, go look at, go check out, did not exist, Nick. It's like, all right, fail number 1, bad brand experience, right? If you have bad interactions with a brand, you might be able to get away with 1, maybe 2. Once you have 2 or 3 or 4 bad experiences, no matter if it's an email or something else, Nick, your perception of that brand is way down in the shitter. Like, I guess my favorite swear word today is S, but it is in a bad spot. You're losing links in the trust chain that we've talked about in the past. And that is what AI is doing to a lot of companies. And Scott does a lot to debunk this in the research he published.
I think that's like the thing with like, TAC, for example, we have like the little like emoji. And so it's so simple when like you could tell it's just like another AI trying to use something, because like it sometimes just removes TAC and just puts the emoji, and it's just like, oh, like, come on, like you can see it on LinkedIn, you can see it on email. Like I get probably 10 to 15 emails a day that is just like, you could just tell it's just kind of like someone trying to use AI that doesn't really deliver on that experience, and it's just like it doesn't even pertain to me or add any value to me. So I mean, I'm excited to read deeper into Scott's content.
Yeah, as we go into the next segment, the flagship conversation with Ali, the idea of data. Right? AI is only as good as your data, and it's never 100% clean. It needs to be clean enough and reliable. But AI is not just failing people because of the data, but it's also failing because of the workflow and how it's being used in the context of its workflow. We're just so early. I do have faith it will get better. I think the best AI will be used from a marketing standpoint and a sales standpoint to help make you or me or the millions of marketers and salespeople out there better at what we do, meaning we're better at connecting with another person or a group of people at a human level in a more effective and efficient way. Versus we're going to replace us and only rely on technology to do what the human was doing, which is completely flawed in my opinion. We'll see if I'm right. We'll see if I'm wrong. We'll know in 5 or 10 years. But no, the next conversation that we're going to have with the SVP of Marketing and Outreach, Ali, is one not to miss. So stay around for that.
We've met in person. We've talked. I feel like we've known each other for a while now, and you are doing some amazing things. Ali, I'll let you introduce yourself in a second, but I want to just touch on one specific thing. For anyone that is listening, if you care about data, she is brilliant when it comes to data from a marketing lens. So Ali, give everyone just a quick, 30-second high-level overview, what you do at Outreach, your role, all that stuff.
Absolutely. Well, I'm Ali Jawin. I'm SVP and head of global marketing at Outreach, which pretty much means everything. It's the comms, it's the PR, it's the brand, but I don't keep my job unless I generate pipeline and revenue. So while everything is important, I absolutely love the safety of my paycheck. So hence my focus on data and metrics, and really excited to be here.
Amazing. Well, we're excited to have you. And for everyone that is listening, we're going to kind of dive into some questions, and then we'll have our exclusive conversation that you can find over at Tech Network. So I'll kick things off, kind of get things going. So the first question is, how do you use data to ensure marketing strategies don't fall flat in today's competitive landscape?
So on one hand, this is a kind of boring answer because it's one you've heard before, but it's test early and test often. It is easier now than ever before to run A/B tests. And they don't have to be these huge things. You can just run a display campaign to see which copy is performing better, which design is performing better. You can do A/B tests of emails. You can do A/B tests of landing pages. And sure, a landing page is only going to get you so far in terms of testing. Display ads are only going to get you so far. However, they can tell you if you are wildly off track or whatnot. And then I also always like to start things small, especially if it's a big investment. Before you do a huge, massive event on your own, try a smaller regional scale one. Before you, dump tons and tons of money into ads, run a more niche campaign. What I just always try and avoid is a huge, big bet with zero way of knowing. Now, there are, I'd say, a couple of areas where you just have to take a leap of faith, and you should only do that if the rest of your C-suite and your board is on board. Wow, that was kind of cheesy. But anyway, I think billboards are one of my biggest bugaboos because you will spend a lot of money on it, and will you ever know? I mean, sure, you could look at things like sales in the geographic area or whatnot, and I've done that, but I always sweat a little bit when I'm doing it. But yeah, for most things in marketing, make sure you're just testing frequently, start small, and then if you're going to do some of the few things that truly just can't be fully measured, make sure everyone's on board with that ahead of time. The situation you don't want to find yourself in is having spent a boatload of money and then not meeting the expectation that you were going to report on it or not be able to report on it.
How many A/B tests does your team run at Outreach? Like on a given month, do you think?
So actually, my VP of Growth Marketing, Bernie Reeder, they do it monthly, and they actually have a team meeting once a month that I love to crash. It's tough for me because I want to jump in, and as a leader, I need to not undermine my leaders, and it's not my meeting, but it's just so freaking cool. And they run it all the time. We don't really put anything out there that isn't tested. What I always find so interesting is, what are they testing for? Because it's not just opens, it's not just clicks, it's not just downloads. That growth team gets really, really nuanced in terms of, we want, one of our key personas is RevOps. How many RevOps people responded to this creative? How many, AEs responded to that? So I think one of the reasons it works so well is that they always make it super clear and super specific what they're looking for. Because earlier in my career, I made the mistake of just having it broad engagement. But, unless you're selling, Clorox to hospitals, you got to be a bit more nuanced than that.
Such great advice. We ran, when I was at HubSpot, about the same cadence. I mean, I can't even tell you how many tests we were running. And this was just within the HubSpot Academy team that worked closely with our PLG team. But the key is what you just said. Create a brief. Get very specific with the hypothesis and how you're going to measure it. In some cases, you want to kind of track the results on a daily, if not hourly basis, in case, something might break, for example. We were not monitoring something well enough, and it was about a 2-week A/B test. And halfway through the A/B test, something broke and it just failed. And we'll get into this a little bit more with the quality of data being so important today, and just making sure your systems are reliable and, they're working as intended.
I really agree with that. I just think, one, to double click or to plus one on it, someone has to be watching it, but it very often should not be the person in my seat. or the CEO, because we get really excited and want to know things right away. Patience is not my virtue. And, I don't think there are, many people, who get to the C-suite because they were patient. However, Evan Gramza, my director of digital marketing, what he's really good at is, and I've given him permission to do this, he will not tell me the results. And he will always tell me when, either, for certain, performance marketing for certain channels, he'll be like, Ali, we got to wait 2 weeks. Be like, Ali, it's been 8 days. Ali, it's been 8.5 days. It's 9.25. So he's really held me accountable and also really impresses upon me the importance of statistical significance, that just because your A/B test on your website is going great, but you only have, 30% of the number of, views to make that significant. So it's so hard to say this to me. I get pressure from my CEO. I get pressure from my board, but just reminding everyone that you have to give it time. These are false results. It never goes away, but I just think people should be, one, really empowered to do that. And then the people, in my position need to recognize it's our own crazy, and that for the better of the business, we need to tone it down a little bit.
You and Nick used to work together, right?
We were ships in the night at Logs.io, but we were always crossing paths.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what's one fact about Nick that I and the audience doesn't know? But you can think about that. We can come back to that question.
Let's come back to that.
Yeah, okay. The second question we want to ask you is around, and we ask this to almost everyone that comes on the show, the news desk, is the big mistake. In 2024, we're talking to you with about 3.5 months left of time to sell, to market, to hit your numbers in 2024. What's the biggest mistake marketers are making this year that you feel needs to be corrected?
I think they are, violating one of the key principles of a people first philosophy, which is people thought people cared about AI because it was AI and not because of how is AI going to solve my problems. And listen, AI is huge. It's transformative, or it's going to be. It is very important. Don't get me wrong about that. I mean, the fact that I can now write a passive aggressive email and put it into ChatGPT and not make it passive aggressive, that is truly, that changes my life. That changes the quality of my relationships. So it's not to say that it's not wildly impactful, but, using my passive aggressive emails as an example, I don't care how my passive aggressive emails are toned down. If you, told me that, and okay, this would be super, super weird and not necessarily believable and obviously fantastical, but if chipmunks going around in a roller rink, were the ones who were doing this better than AI, I mean, again, I'd have a lot of other questions, but again, I don't care how you get there. I have my problems. I don't care about companies. I know it's true. I don't really care about their technology. I have my problems. I have my needs. And I care about how companies solve those problems and solve those needs. I think it's twofold. I do think, one, marketers can sometimes get bright, shiny object syndrome and oh, it's new, and sort of not wanting to be laggards, wanting to be at the forefront of thought leadership. That is really important. But I also know that we all probably got a lot of pressure, or are getting a lot of pressure, from the people who really do care about AI, which is, VCs and CEOs, which makes sense that AI solves a pain point and problem that they have, but not that most of our buyers have. So it's not that we shouldn't talk about AI. I think it's important that people know that certain technology does that, especially if you're selling to enterprise, where again, you want to be careful with AI as well, because more and more, massive companies are having, it almost scares them off sometimes because there are regulatory concerns, there are data privacy concerns. But I think marketers just have to hold the line, and trust me, it's hard. I am doing this myself, and it's not always fun. But just remembering, is someone going to buy this because of AI? If you are selling to tech enthusiasts, maybe, and in which case, Godspeed. But for the rest of us who probably don't and are selling and marketing to people who have problems to solve, don't forget the core of, people first, solve their problem, later explain the how. But yeah, I think we just all got, happy feet when it came to AI.
Plus 1,000.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like I've talked to a lot of people about AI, but like the way that you just explained it was so good, because I do think a lot of people have that like happy feet and like they just get so excited. I mean, think about it. I mean, we're in trade show season now. Like I guarantee you, inbound Dreamforce, like all those things that happen, you're gonna go and you're gonna see so many people talking about AI. They're gonna slap it on every single type of booth that they have, and yeah, it's just so interesting to me.
Yeah, I think a good example, and I'll use a B2C. So, I have a 5-month-old. And so, getting sleep at night is my biggest goal in life. And, we have, all the different apps. And one of them, which, I really do like, it kept on touting it's going to have a predictive AI nap schedule, or it was going to use AI to put together a nap schedule. And I saw it and I'm like, this is the exact same thing that my pediatrician like printed out on paper. And like, it's not even good. So, again, like I was like, oh, maybe again, if you're going to use AI, if you're going to say it's AI, it better be good. It better be a lot better than what else people are putting out there. But yeah, again, I just want my kid to sleep well. I don't care how the schedule gets made.
100%. Just side note, it was the app Huckleberry by any chance? Because that's I use.
It was, yes.
So random side tangent, but so I've been using Huckleberry. So I have a 6-year-old who's almost 7, and I have 18-month-old twins. But I used it with the older one, and like, I don't know, it was like pretty spot on. So we used it with the babies, and like they were sleeping through the night at like 4 months old. And I was like, I don't know, you can charge me whatever you want, and like I will pay for it because somehow it's working. And I still use it. I mean, they're like I said, 18 months, and I still use it every single day. So. But that's funny.
Yeah, no, it's a great app. But yeah, our naps, we don't know when our naps are happening. He sleeps through the night, so I'm not going to complain. But yeah, it's still a little unpredictable. And yeah, again, I don't mind that it did. And it was just like, it leaned so hard on how it was going to do this amazing thing because of its AI. And then I'm like, you're just using best practices. And you input when I want him to go to bed and when I want him to wake up. Like, I'm really seriously here. But I'm still a happy customer.
But like last point on this, and I know, Nick, you have another question. AI right now, I think, is failing to under-promise and over-deliver. They're over-promising and under-delivering, and that like is like a huge no-no in everything marketing and everything sales. And I guess we just leave it at that.
Yeah,
100%. Cool. Let's talk about the executive side of it. So, I'm sure you obviously being on the executive team, you're in board meetings, you're dealing with the CEO. From a C-level mindset, what's the most common misconception from executives about data-driven marketing decisions?
I would say that it's probably that because it's marketing, that it's therefore fluffy. I do think a lot of, VCs and board members do recognize that marketing has wildly changed in the past 20 years. But I think there's definitely there's still niggling little but do they really know? Aren't they just painting with their crayons and pretty pictures in the corner? Aren't they just obsessing over wordsmithing, which don't get me wrong, if it doesn't look good and if it doesn't sound good, that's a problem. But I think they assume that we're not good at math, or that we might not have the business savvy, and that there just tends to be a lot of skepticism. And I'd say, one thing is that, let's not make the problem worse by giving them fuzzy metrics. I always try and be very clear with the board where I can say, hey, if it is digital, I can promise you, I can tie it through. It's not easy, but the technology exists. If you're going to ask me about share of voice, or, the LinkedIn metric, share of feed. Actually, no, share of feed's different. It's digital, but share of voice. Is it an important metric? Yes, absolutely. But I would call it, that's directional. I'm not going to put the exact same weight on it because that one is a little bit more fluffy. Not that it's not important. So I'd say, one, be honest about where you can be really, really clear on what you're reporting. And then also, I make this mistake once a year. I really should learn better. But once a year, one board meeting out of 4, I always report below revenue and pipeline. I know better than now not to do it. But every once in a while, there will have been a campaign that we've just launched and I'm really excited about. So I want to talk about, engagement rates or, click-throughs or, personas. And every single time I do that, I get slapped down and it's really painful because they're like, well, that's not revenue. And they're right. They are right. it makes me look like I'm, I don't have anything real and I'm grasping at straws. So thankfully I made that mistake 6 months ago. So I've got, another 6 months to hopefully come to my senses. I don't think I'll ever be perfect at it. But, one, we can, not feed the animals by making sure that we are only give them metrics that tie to revenue. Unless you have a board that actually really is interested in brand and share of voice, then by all means, one, please appreciate how lucky you are and go there. But, for most boards that are a lot of finance people and VCs, show how it ties to revenue. Don't go anything, below pipeline. Channels, I would say sometimes. And if there's a major campaign, like, Dreamforce is next week, and that's a big thing for us, I would report on a Dreamforce. And Unleash, which is our major conference, I would report on that. But unless it's something that the whole entire company is involved with for months, like a major tier 1 campaign, don't go anywhere less than that.
I like that a lot. I do feel that when it comes to like the reporting at the board level, it of course changes based off the stage of company and what's the goals of the company. I think what you're saying is if you get too into the weeds, which is then removing the conversation of the data from the revenue lens and the pipeline lens, you can start to go down rabbit holes, and people like the investors, that's what I've experienced. Is that also kind of part of what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually funny. That's not where I was thinking initially, but I'm so glad you brought it up. Yes, because then you go into like, well, why that color? Or like, why that ebook? You go down to content strategy, you get into creative, like you just get into things you did not prepare for. And I mean, and it's what's so hard about board meetings anyway, that, I know this is a little bit of a tangent, but like you can prepare, you can be the most prepared. You can know every single slide on your deck, like the back of your hand. You can have memorized the appendix, how every data point was generated. But, for an example, my very first board meeting at Outreach, it was before Unleash. And the question that really stumped me was, our speaker was, forget something, and everyone was like, oh, like, is that, the speaker you want? And if you could have any speaker in the world, who would you choose? And I was so taken aback that, thankfully, the CRO, my good friend Kevin Bogner, was like, does anyone know Taylor Swift? And I was like, yes, Taylor Swift. And like we moved on. There's always one question that's out of left field that like completely stumps me. So that's gonna happen anyway. Don't give them any more cause to go into directions that just like you haven't prepared for. It's a stressful situation as it is.
Yeah. And with boards and executives, even with your team, a framework that I love using, and then we'll move to the last final question before we get to the real deep stuff with Ali, but is sell, tell, consult. Do you use that at all?
Not in that way, but I love that. I'm stealing that. That's genius.
So I learned that from, I think it was a previous guest we had. It was either Trisha or Katie, the two CMOs that I had the honor of working with at Drift, both ex-Salesforce. And I guess Salesforce use that a lot. Like, are you coming into this conversation or this meeting? Are we selling? Am I selling you? Am I telling you something? The decision's been made. I'm telling you this is it. And let's go. And you're going to agree or disagree and commit. Or am I consulting you on a decision that we have to make? That's kind of in flight. So yeah, it was pretty helpful when we started to kind of like level set some important conversations with that.
Love it.
Last question before we get to the real stuff that's for TAC Network subscribers. How do you blend in your mind this idea of people first marketing, people first go to market, which is like the storytelling, the brand building, creating fans, community activation, messaging and positioning? I think it's that plus more with the data-driven science side of marketing. And how do you like think about it? I guess I'm going to change the question a little bit. How do you think about it from an investment standpoint?
It's a really great question. And I'd say, one, I just at a high level, I think it absolutely helps that people first every single time performs better. Jargon doesn't work. Buzzwords don't work. The amount of times I go to a website where I see, above the fold, I'm like, there's no semantic value here. I don't even know is pretty wild. So one, it just works better. But what I found was whenever content people had a number, it really hamstrung them in terms of the creativity, in terms of the community. So what I've actually done at Outreach, which I've never done before, and it really works because of the personalities. I don't know how easy it'd be to replicate it, but it's been fantastic, is that I have content sitting in 3 different teams with 3 very different goals. So I have content that sits under brand and creative, and they are just there for, the true sense of awareness, getting people interested. So we share a lot of proprietary data. We do a lot of videos. It's really like fun, top of the funnel awareness. And for them, again, they still have some metrics, but it's really just like awareness, the eyeballs, the very, very tippy top of the funnel. And I just, really level set with, the CEO and the board that this is the stuff that is the hardest to measure. But thankfully, I have such a great team there. I'm like, you can't tell me that this isn't good. And also the amount of PR that we get from it validates it. So I just, really set expectations there that they are really freed from the hard metrics. But again, we're going to measure them. But, I don't want that in their head. I want them to be free. I want them to be creative. I want them to grab the attention. Then I have the content that sits under product marketing. And they are tied to pipeline, but we look at it as influenced pipeline. Did people, interact with it? We're not going to look at first touch. We're not going to look at last touch. And we're just going to see like if they interacted with it, because they, it's a huge investment. And if people don't like how we're talking about the product, then, that's not going to be good for anyone. And then I have my growth content team, and they are solely tied to dollars. If anything, I almost tell them to like ignore everything then they hear from me, like, don't listen, and just to follow the data. Look at the keywords, and they are solely measured on conversions, pipeline, and revenue. I want them almost like in their own little black box, not to be influenced by like the noise around, because it's just about revenue for them. And again, it only works well because I have great leaders. I have great people underneath doing this. But yeah, it's the best I've ever seen, because everyone is, one, writing and creating to their strength, but also it's very clear what the expectations are.
Love that. You align the metrics to what the team is producing, and then you share that with the stakeholders that hold you accountable. That's fantastic. That's great.
Yeah. So for everyone that's listening, we're going to jump over to the exclusive side right now. Hopefully we'll see you at TAC Network, tacnetwork.com, and you will be able to find the exclusive segment of this next part with Ali right there.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of GTM News Desk, presented by the TAC Network. To hear our full conversation with our guest today, head to the link in the show notes to subscribe to the TAC Network. Until next time, I'm Mark Killens.
And I'm Nick Bennett. Keep it people first, everybody.